Yonggary from 1967 is a South Korean monster movie that was one of the original cash-ins on Godzilla, alongside Gorgo and Gamera. Although the movie is your typical giant monster rampage flick, there are some memorable aspects of it, such as Yonggary himself, who does have an interesting design while still being simplistic. And around the time TriStar's 1998 Godzilla film was released and Toho bringing back the big G for Godzilla 2000 Millennium, Korean film director Shim Hyung-rae, who you may know as the director of Dragon Wars, decided to remake Yonggary, who seems to have been forgotten about by this point. But hey, if Gamera can come back, then surely Yonggary would be able to, right? At the time, Yonggary was the most expensive film ever made in Korea at a budget of a whopping $13.5 million. Now let's keep in mind that computer-generated imagery was still being experimented with in foreign countries, as films here in the US such as Independence Day, The Fifth Element, and The Matrix were all the rave in the late 90s. And now, considering that, let's see what 1999's Yonggary, aka Reptilian, as it's known overseas, has to offer.
Has been fulfilled!
This is what you wanted, isn't it?
No, Holly! I can talk to him!
Yeah. There you have the supposedly highly anticipated summer blockbuster of 1999 all the way from South Korea that apparently had a lot of interest behind it and was the most expensive Korean movie ever made at the time. God, and to think Justice League was an expensive disaster. Okay, in all seriousness, what on earth is this? Why am I looking at the most hideous CGI I've ever seen in my life, along with actors who can't even act if they were being held at gunpoint?
You're my creation!
So, Yonggary is about this thing that is reanimated, literally, by aliens after being discovered by a mining expedition, and goes on a rampage and decides to not be evil, so the aliens send another monster and the two fight, and that's pretty much it story-wise. However, there's so much more to talk about. I previously mentioned the god-awful acting combined with the atrocity that is the movie's special effects. It's like Tommy Wiseau walked into the set of Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Pathetic and weak. Clearly Raiden has molded you in his image.
You're not good. You're just a chicken. Chip, 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 chip. Oh, hi, Mark.
And alongside the terrible acting and the terrible special effects, there is the terrible writing. Basically, the beginning of the movie mainly consists of this one guy who tries to cover up deaths at his digging site like it's nothing, and hired a photojournalist for a story but won't let him take pictures, even though he could also just get some pen and paper as an alternative, but he decides not to do that. Also, he threatens to get his workers deported because they're illegal aliens, even though they could also report the fact that he's covering up the deaths of his workers. So after rampaging the streets of Korea, America, Yonggary decides to be a good monster for no reason near the end of the film, and it's pretty evident that he's responsible for the deaths of tens, hundreds, if not thousands during his rampage, or I think that would be the military, but I'm sure you get the idea. Oh, and those aliens I previously mentioned, aka the best special effects in this film, what's their deal? Well, other than being the only things to move the plot forward, they're also evil. Yeah, shocker, I know, who would have thought? Not even gonna bother with the characters as much. They're all equally dull, stupid, and forgettable. And the scenes at the military base pretty much have nothing to do with this movie whatsoever, other than to say that something's happening. The movie's honestly better off without them. It's not like a Godzilla movie where the military can actually keep the story going, like in Godzilla vs. Biollante and Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. Also, get a load of this dialogue.
Hey, you must be crazy. We're taking these mothers out.
But I got a big, juicy story for you. Now listen, I got one word for you. Dinosaur. How's that grab you?
Do you smell it, Doctor? It's
smells so old.
Oh god, I almost forgot. This one scene, this one moment in this film, by the time you think you've seen everything, the movie presents you with this.
Arnold and Wilson take the left flank. Dell and Moody take the right. Grissom and Ballou circle from behind. O'Neill, you and that Hellraiser stay with me. Move out! Compared to this guy, Godzilla is a pussy.
Whoa there, man. I don't think the world is ready for Yonggary versus Lizzie.
A gigantic mutated wolf, a gigantic mutated crocodile that is the size of a football field that could kick the shit out of Godzilla.
And for those who are wondering, no, this is not a deleted scene or lost footage of any sort. I assure you that what you are looking at is real. What is this? Who let this happen, and why? Why did it happen? I think it would also be a good time to mention that there is in fact an original cut of the film that only premiered in Korea in 1999, and only at the premiere. Since then, no one else has ever seen it. Why is that? Despite the fact that it was the biggest opening for a Korean film ever made at the time, Yonggary did get some negative reactions, even to where the audience were questioning if their budget was spent wisely, hint it wasn't, as well as Shim's ability as a filmmaker. So when they decided to fix the film, they thought that the special effects needed a little bit of some tweaking with some final touches, as well as replace the scenes that contain actual monster suits, which I'll go more into later, and, well, almost redo the entire movie, which included filming scenes in order, which usually never works unless you're George Miller, and a large amount of the budget being spent on the Caucasian actors. Now, some may argue that these filmmakers were just new, young, and inexperienced. Yeah, they just didn't know what to do for a movie this scale. Which I do believe. I mean, how else would we have gotten this?
What, your mama didn't give you enough attention when you were a tadpole? Take a bite out of this, Dino!
But long story short, this re-edit, commonly known as Reptilian overseas, whose tagline fittingly says it's not what you expect, only made things worse. Did I mention that the Korean government helped fund this movie? Then there's the final battle. The aliens send another monster named Psychor, then Liu Kang and Shao Kahn transform into... Oh, wait, wrong movie. Yonggary and Psychor fight. Okay, I'd make another Mortal Kombat Annihilation joke, but I just want to talk about how this film was originally going to be done in tokusatsu. During production, they actually designed and made suits for the monsters that would be portrayed by real actors. Very little of the footage can be seen in the movie, but they're in very quick shots and hard to tell, as well as very easy to miss, considering how much of the movie is just one big CGI dump. There's also some of the Toku footage and a music video promoting the film. If any of this sounds familiar, something similar happened during the production of Shin Godzilla. They were going for a film done in tokusatsu, but switched to CGI after some money has already been spent on practical effects. In Shin Godzilla, Toho did it because they saw potential in a fully computer-generated Godzilla, since there are things in animation that can't be done practically. Not to mention, this movie had about a $15 million budget, while Yonggary had a $13.5 million, $19.4 million if you adjust it for inflation. So why did Yonggary switch over to CGI, ditching practical effects altogether? The creation of the monster suit has taken 1.5 years and a lot of money. A lot of money. And what did they think about this turn of events? When I saw the completed version, I felt like it was equal to those films in Hollywood in terms of computer graphics. What? One good thing about the old Yonggary was the special effects, which were comparable to those in Godzilla 2000. What? As Mr. Shim said, The newborn Yonggary has even more charm thanks to better computer effects. So, on that note, I think it's time to wrap it up. This is certainly one of the worst films I have ever seen in my life. It makes Gamera Super Monster look like Guardian of the Universe. It makes Ape look like the original King Kong. It makes Pacific Rim Uprising look like the first Pacific Rim. It makes Rebirth of Mothra 2 look like the original Mothra. It makes Godzilla look like the definitive version of the original Godzilla. Podcast episode coming soon. I believe that it is very safe to say that Reptilian is the absolute worst giant monster movie ever made, ever. And I know it's a cliche. Might as well just say it. It is the Room of Kaiju films.
What a story, Mark.
Yeah, you can say that again.
Oh yeah, and they were going to set up sequels too. You know that photojournalist I mentioned earlier? Well, he was supposed to be in the movie more often towards the end to reveal documents consisting of foreshadowing to future films and monsters. However, because filming took so long, the actor had to leave for another commitment, so the ending was reworked and they didn't even bother with what was originally going to happen, like they knew they were never going to make a sequel. And just one more thing. This movie came out the same year as Revenge of Iris, which not only had CGI kaiju, but a budget of $7 million. A little more than half of Yonggary's budget. Actually, no. Why even bother with this comparison? Why even bother comparing the worst kaiju movie ever made with one of the greatest ever made? But what am I even trying to say anymore? Video's over now. And sorry if this review seemed a little unorganized, but that's because this movie is unorganized. Everything about it is just unorganized. Thank you guys for watching. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you guys later. Also, nice job reminding people that they should be watching Godzilla 98 instead.